morning. Thank you so much for tuning in to another exciting episode of Queening with the Empress with me, your host, Patience Phiri. Today on our show with our wonderful audience that is here on the screen, hello everybody, we would like to talk about the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic on our mental health. So we went into lockdown last year in Zimbabwe, and I will confess that the first month for me was very trying because all of a sudden everything that I thought I knew was questioned. I lost jobs. I was anxious because I was not making money and I didn't know when I would make money again. I was worried about being able to pay my rent. I was worried about staying at home because at times I would feel as if the walls in my apartment were moving closer. I started seeing like funny things and I was very worried. I was worried if I went out that maybe when I came back or if I coughed or I sneezed, I thought something, maybe this is it. And when I turned on the TV, it was always the worst stories, you know? So I was freaking out and I started worrying, am I okay? Until I figured out that I needed to take care of my mental health. So mental health awareness, especially over the past year, has become something that we need to guard jealously. And today we have someone who will talk to us about that, but also in our audience, we have people that will share their experiences of how they've managed to make it this far. What are they tricks? Are they stories? At times we learn from people's stories. So Zenani Masuku is here and she's a trained development practitioner and an advocate for better mental health care services in this, our beautiful country, Zimbabwe. Zenani, good morning.
Hi, Queen. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm fine. I'm doing great despite the lockdown, despite the COVID. Alive. I'm grateful. So I'm good.
That's always what we want to hear. You know, we could do with every bit of positivity, especially these days. Okay, Zenani, can you hear us?
Okay, now I can hear you.
Okay, welcome back. All right, Zenani, you are part of AFRIBS. Can you please tell us what African Institute of Ending Violence, Bullying and Suicide is all about?
Okay, so what we do in AFRIBS is we do a lot of awareness programs. We educate the public, communities, families and individuals on methods of bullying and mental health. We teach them on how to identify someone who is struggling or to identify within themselves if they are having some mental health challenges or crises. And we also help them by referring them to some professionals linked to the direct problem that they're having. We also educate the public on stigma and how to deal with stigma. We have over the years have known that there is such a thing as mental health, but unfortunately due to bias thinking and due to unethical thinking, a lot of people have been thinking about mental health. For example, a lot of people have been thinking of mental health and mental health equals someone who is crazy. So we are changing that. Family members on how those within the family who has a mental health challenge, and we're also providing support for those who have a mental health challenge, a mental illness, so that they can be in a better place.
Do we in Zimbabwe have? Okay, do we in Zimbabwe have high cases? Because I see that AFRIBS is about ending violence, bullying and suicide. Do we have high cases of bullying and suicide? I know violence, yes, sadly. But for bullying and suicide, do we have a lot of cases in that direction?
We do. We have high cases. And over the years, it has been a topic that has even been talked about in Parliament, but not properly addressed. It's a case that has also led to a number of young people committing suicide. And unfortunately, due to low investigation of matters, there's not enough, some of the ways schools even deal with bullying within their schools, or how parents intervene in situations where a child is being bullied by another child. So and also suicide. It's especially under lockdown and COVID, it has increased as well. A lot of people are struggling, their livelihoods are being affected, and due to lack of talking about mental health and lack of enough resources in terms of suicide, a lot of people don't know what to do when they are faced with the negative thoughts. And unfortunately, because we don't talk about it enough, not that we don't talk about it, but we don't talk about it enough or have enough resources in such matters. A lot of people don't even realize that they're having a mental health crisis, and when they are feeling suicidal, they don't think of looking for help. So yes, there is a problem, and yes, definitely there is a rise.
Okay, now I need to ask you, there's been a lot of talk, especially over the past year, of mental health awareness. Your mental health matters. What is mental health?
Okay, so when we're talking about mental health, we're talking about our emotions, our thoughts, how we think, how
she's having a problem with her connection. She should be back.
And how we behave, because we relate to other people, elements of ourselves in our day-to-day lives. They're able to address the stresses that come and attack those different parts of ourselves. For example, you have other people who lose their jobs. Some may turn to being severely depressed and being unable to move forward, trying to look for a job. Instead, they prefer having to sleep more often, eat more, or sleep less. They just feel so defeated, and it becomes a continuous behavioral pattern. And then this affects them. It affects their livelihoods, affects their family members, and affects their friends. And so when we find someone who is like this, we then say someone is having a mental health crisis, or has developed a mental disorder that needs to be addressed, because it's affecting how they are living.
What is the importance of taking care of our mental health, especially during this pandemic?
Oh, okay. Well, first of all, we are all in a situation where this is still fairly new to us, though we had an entire year of trying to adjust to the new changes. I'm sure that there are a lot of people who from the beginning of the year thought maybe we might not have a lockdown, and for a lot this was a surprise. So having to be at home and then trying to adjust to come and find ways to create some livelihoods for yourself, having your children having to then live in a situation where they're no longer going out, they're no longer going to see their friends, they're no longer doing the activities that they used to. This is affecting not just adults, but it's affecting children. So having to then talk about mental health, finding out signs and symptoms, finding out how best to tackle some of the mental health challenges a person faces, and finding some coping mechanisms during the pandemic, it's vital. It's vital because we need to protect ourselves from having to develop some severe disorders. For example, you might find that some children might develop a disorder called anorexia or bulimia. Anorexia is, the inability to keep thing. You find that some, they just don't want to eat, maybe because they feel like if they eat more, they'll gain weight, or they just don't have an appetite because of their depression, or they begin to eat more as a way to cope with their stress. We cope with our stresses differently. So if we don't find positive ways of coping with our stress, we might find ourselves having to adapt to new coping mechanisms that can affect us, and that can affect us badly, in an unhealthy manner. So it's important to keep talking about mental health. It's important to talk about coping mechanisms. It's important to find out, what can I do when I am failing as an individual to take care of myself? Do I talk to a professional? Do I talk to a friend? What do I do to make sure that I am mentally fit? So it's important. That's why it's so important. We need to continuously be fit, and we need to keep ourselves because if you maybe remember how you so it's
Every time I've had a conversation with you and we talk about mental health awareness and all those things, you've done videos, you've taken it to Twitter, you've taken it to Facebook, you've taken it to Instagram. You make it a point that this is a conversation that we must have in our circles, in our networks. We should not shy away from having this conversation. We should not shy away from admitting that we are feeling overwhelmed, asking for help, addressing the issue. Why is it important to you, and why should it be important for all of us to talk about it?
Look for help when you don't know that you need help. It's so difficult to go and look for a professional when you don't know you need a professional to help. Develop a mental health disorder aided by going to a medical professional to help and or harmful to your family or your friends, and which is something that can be avoided. So that's why it's so important for me to keep doing this. It's so unnecessary for someone to die, to kill themselves, to commit suicide when that can be prevented. It's so unnecessary for someone to harm the next person when they can be prevented. When I used to do some prison work, I used to do some mental health awareness prison work in Londolozi. Mm-hmm. And I met a woman there. She had killed her daughter, her 3-year-old daughter, and her history was that she was under pressure, having her family were not taking care of her, or they neglected her because they said, you know what, you chose to be a mother, therefore take the brunt of it. She developed depression, severe depression, and because she didn't get the help she needed on time, she became severely depressed and became dangerous towards the moment of being prevented. Right now, she's still getting her treatment, but she's left with the thought of, I killed my daughter. Because when you begin to have a treatment, I'm saying again, and then an attempt to commit, a lot of them will say, thank God I didn't kill myself. Thank God I didn't go through with it. And they'll tell you, I just felt so overwhelmed at that point, and I didn't to do it, felt like the right decision. And that's why it's so important driving this conversation. It's so important for me to keep trying to share as much coping mechanisms for people and sharing support for it. The damage of mental illnesses can be prevented.
Well, I would love to find out from the audience, for those that are willing to share, that during this past year, it's been a roller coaster. We've, like I'm saying, for me, it was very it was testing. It tested everything that I had inside to make it through the day. It was just like even making it through the day. It was an issue of, should I bath? Even bathing would be hard, especially with the first lockdown. Even bathing, getting up to bath, to eat, because you're like, I'm getting up to do the same thing. There's nothing else that's changing. What is it? Did anyone experience, what have been your experiences during the lockdown? Have you had experiences that you would like to share with us? Please remember to raise your hand and we can, then you can share with us. But as you do that, Zenani, are there signs that we can pick up on and say, okay, this is a sign that we need to be worried about?
Yes. If you find that you're no longer feeling like yourself emotionally, or you're thinking, I'm having more of negative thoughts, or if your behavior is not the usual behavior that makes everyone around you feel comfortable and makes you happy, those are one of the very key symptoms that you can see, or signs within yourself to say, I am no longer myself. I don't feel like myself, and I don't think the people around me are enjoying this new me. So that's like really one of the key top signs you can see within yourself. If you are now eating less and you're sleeping less, you're having insomnia, then I would say, talk to a medical profession. If you're also finding that you're having more negative thoughts, or you're unable to do anything, like you're unable to do your chores around you, you're unable to interact with your family members, and you're unable to reply to messages more often than usual, that's a sign that something is not right. Try and address it. Find out from a medical profession what could be wrong with me and have that conversation.
Okay. Luba, you've got your hand up. Please come through.
Hello, how are you?
Good.
Yes. Well, as for me, I got to understand that when the first lockdown happened, I wasn't as much depressed as I was with the second one that started in January, because I was coming from the festive season. My spirits were still high. I was still having that December vibe, and from nowhere, bam, lockdown. I was going through a very hard time. I would just wake up in the morning. I wouldn't even feel like talking to anyone, like even holding my phone, because now I was thinking of all the plans that I had. I wasn't even eating as well. I remember when my friend came to see me, she was actually telling me that she have lost weight, and I'm telling her, I always feel like I'm overweight. So when you're saying I've lost weight, what do you mean? And then she was asking me, how are your eating patterns? I'm like, maybe I wake up in the morning, I feel like overwhelmed. I'm thinking about a lot of things. And the only time I think about eating is maybe around 1 or 3 p.m. That's the only time I think about eating. So it was a very difficult time for me. I would feel overwhelmed. Now I have to go through online learning, and it was just so much. I didn't even know how I was going to handle that or deal with my own self, because everything that was happening was just taking me aback. It was just overwhelming. I was so depressed for 2 weeks straight. I was very depressed. January was a very difficult month for me. I wasn't having the January disease with finances. I was having the January disease with my emotions, with myself. So it was just one of those difficult phases I had to go through all by myself with no one to reach out to.
Okay. Thank you for sharing that, Luba. Thank you so much. Love and light to you. Okay, Carmen, you've got your hand up.
Okay, thank you. I'll try and make it so short because I've experienced at least maybe 3 lockdowns in different spaces. So the first one, maybe to just mention that I am living in Mauritius. I'm a teacher there. So our first lockdown last year in March, we were just told lockdown, no warning, no what. So that was like around the 18th of March. And so we, everything was closed. Literally everything, and you were not allowed to you either thrown in jail or you pay a hefty fine. So yeah, 3 months tight, we were not allowed uphume. After 2 weeks, having started the lockdown, that's when they opened supermarkets, but you would only go on the day ele alphabet. So we'd go on the alphabet order. However, we had to stay in the house and, seeing the same faces. Going to work and not seeing people at home. It's sort of like a time for, I don't know if I can, lack of a better word, downtime, or, you're just not seeing those faces, you will see them later. But now having to see those faces and, already you have, that's life, you have problems, you are depressed about this and that, and you're away from home and whatnot. It was a very, I felt extremely depressed. And I had to adapt working online, and I'm a music teacher. I have to find ways as a practical subject like that online. And then I have to hear stories from home, things like that. And you're thinking, you start, bearing people in your mind, because you're now anticipating if so and so's person has died, maybe my mother will die, maybe so and so, and you start, having funerals, where do and it you get into this dark a hole. You know, it was constant headaches. I couldn't sleep. I was always crying and whatnot. However, I would try to, run and give myself, okay, today I've done, we have a little road complex here, it's about 300 meters. So I would challenge myself and say, today I've done 5K, the next week maybe I do 10, until I got to 20. When I got to 20, that was like my quitting time. I was like, okay, now you're going insane. So it was very tough. It was very tough. I mean, even when the lockdown was isiphelile in June, yes, we could go out and whatnot. And then in August, I had to go back to work. But I felt that I was not able to give to my children, to my students, because I was homesick. And so much is happening also in your life personally, family, and whatnot. And I was just, I was just not at ease. The crying continued, the headaches continued. Sometimes I'll just sit, noma ngingacabangi lutho, and tears just, flow. And so, and abantu sometimes can tell ukuthi ngikhona, if especially I'm a happy person, can tell ukuthi no, you're not yourself, and they opened the borders, and then I came home in December, and such healing that I felt. And but then before I left home, lockdown again. That means it felt like I couldn't get that whole complete complete healing that I needed just from being in a familiar atmosphere, because then I couldn't move, I couldn't see people. And then coming back, now I am back. When you come back to Mauritius, everyone who arrives in the country has to do a mandatory 14-day quarantine. So I'm locked up in a hotel for 14 days. I can only go out to the balcony. I only open the door for whoever's coming to check temperature and whoever's coming to give me food. That also, being closed up and being a creative person I am, is just, quite draining. You try, mechanisms, you listen to that, you watch that, and you laugh, after, but everything all just comes back. And it's mostly at night, when you're trying to sleep, where everything just comes back. It's just like, wow, you start thinking of all things, and in short, that's my thing. Wow. So it's, yeah.
Much for sharing your story, Kazi. Thank you so much. Okay, so, listening to what Unyali was saying, I would want to ask, I would want to go back to you, Zenani, and say to you, can you please, I don't know if there are causes. Are they causes? Can we pick it up? Can we know, are they causes of mental health? What is it? Is a mental illness? Kulama cause, dehydration, can you match it? Luba and Carmen have shared, they're talking about lack of appetite. They are talking about just being overwhelmed. And I get it, like this darkness that takes over them. So I would love to find out, are they causes?
Yes, they are. I'm happy for the stories that we shared, and the two ladies who shared. You are both guys are really strong. And you know what? Having the mental challenge or crisis is not easy. It's not easy. Yeah. So I'm happy that you're still staying strong. So big ups on that, and keep trying those coping mechanisms. Keep trying to get better. To answer your question, Queen, yes, the causes, it can be triggered by the environment you're in. For example, we found that it was causing her depression. It was the lockdown that was causing her to feel the way she was feeling. So the environment does play a major role on whether or not you get triggered. It could be a loss of a loved one that can trigger you. The rapid changes that even the COVID is giving to us, because anxiety itself is a mental disorder. it could be genetic, that your whole family just suffers from depression. You find that some children from a young age, 10, 12, even 5 years, they show signs of depression, or they show signs of, you have children who are so excessively shy, so mental illnesses can come in different ways, from environments to traumatic experiences. It can be hereditary, that you're born with it. Some are born with bipolar, some are born with schizophrenia, some are born OCD. So it comes in different ways. That's why it's so important to practice self-care. Self-care is the ability to check on your emotions, your thoughts, your feelings, and your behavior. It should be a daily practice as much as you brush your teeth. So self-care allows you to even try and identify whether or not it's happening with me, and can I do something about this particular part of me? Can I change the way I'm feeling? Can I change the way I'm thinking? What can I do to feel better? But unfortunately, also with mental illnesses and disorders, sometimes you can't tell. You cannot tell if you're depressed. Sometimes you cannot tell that you're anxious, because a lot of times some people don't even know what anxiety is. Some people don't know what depression is. So they can't pick up and say, oh, I think I'm depressed, because I understand what depression is. I understand what anxiety is. So it's so important for us to keep having this conversation so that we can be able to identify. And also, there's some people with bipolar and schizophrenia. For example, schizophrenia is hallucinations. You may hallucinate sounds, voices in your head that tell you things, and you're just so convinced. So also with mental illnesses, a lot of times you cannot be able to tell that you have a mental illness. So that's why it's also important for family and friends to equip themselves and to empower themselves to know and to identify if someone is not okay, so that they can be able to approach the situation in some way or another.
Okay, and then now that we talk about it, a lot of times we talk about how to identify it and what this is and what that is not, but we hardly ever talk about what should happen after. If I realize that I am not okay, what must happen after?
Help. Talk to organizations that deal with mental illnesses. Consult us, ask us, I'm feeling like this, I'm feeling like that, I'm thinking like this, I'm behaving like this. What do I do? Is this normal? Or go to your medical doctor, your GP, your general practitioner, and go to them and say, I'm failing to sleep, eat well, I'm failing to do my normal duties, and I don't think this is normal. I'm being affected in ABC, in this way and in that way. What can I do, and how can I get better? And then these professionals will assist you. One way or another, they will assist you. So definitely, if you feel like you're no longer feeling, you're feeling like you can't get yourself better, then seek a professional to assist you. It is no shame in looking for help. There is no shame at all.
And then, people now, I will connect it to social media, that during the lockdown, for many people, the only way we could stay in touch, have some human interaction, was through our phones and gadgets and whatever app, this, message that. But then we were also now watching the news, and I think Carmen mentioned it, that people at times don't notice that some of the stuff, especially on messaging apps, some of the stuff that they are quick to share in groups, they don't think about how it will impact the next person. So the news, we were getting a lot of stuff, like there was a lot of hysteria on the news, and people in groups were just sharing. So if someone passes away, people just throw it onto the group, not knowing how what if anyone else has a relationship with that person, or maybe they haven't heard, and things like that. So it was like we're getting death notices almost every day of people, and that was somehow, it was making us very anxious. How do we handle that, especially during this pandemic? Okay, my lovely viewers, we stop here for today. Be sure to join the conversation next week where we'll still be talking about the effect of COVID-19 pandemic on our mental health. Don't miss it. Keep watching Queening with the Empress on Site ZW.
Imimika mburiba ofo amunokudzidza unoswera muchienda kuJoburg muchiita zvokuita umbavha ngadaro unonzwa sei
Nyakuchaya so.
I would love to hear, what is your thought of consent? What do you understand?
Consent is when I can actually say, yes, I can agree that we can do this together. That is what consent is, and that is what it means.
It's a good morning to you. Welcome to Asake Online. My name is Zenzere Ndebele, and this is the Breakfast Club.
Hayi chance anzaye ngithole cause mina ngifike estage abafaka bangalasa mangithreatena lo ngindodo wabiyale esithi sebenza icase yami womfoto wantshela ukuthi mina mangingavuma ngicala ukuthi ngine ngayenza konke ukubulala amahondlela lana ngizophiwa injection so mina injection ngingakwazi injection.
Hello and welcome to Asake Online. My name is Leslie Moyo and the name of the program is Fix My City.
And today sikhuluma ngoba sikhangela iphayili yezibi lesibona izodantshwa lapha phezulu, and we are worried as residents apha nalapha eLuvuvu ukuthi kade kuhamba njani ku city council.
Kanti wangathatha into ozikwanisayo kanti.
Very sad to see that citizens had to take matters into their own hands in this way to try and obtain some relief for their starvation, because everything is being heaped on them. The 2% tax heaped on them, the price of fuel rise heaped on them with extra combi costs.